you worried that your child is bored? Let's talk about how we can tackle these and when we truly know it is boredom. This is Adventures in Suzuki Parenting. Hi, I'm Jody St. Clair, and I create videos for Suzuki parents with practice tips, conquering challenges, and making for a great practice experience. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you can get practice tips every week. I would love to hear in the comments below what you do to battle boredom. I've definitely seen this before where a parent thinks that their child is bored because maybe they're not showing a great deal of interest while they're playing, or they're looking around, or they're not really engaged with what they're doing. And even though something isn't quite mastered to a high level, but they're not really engaging with the material. So let's talk about what really is true boredom and what we can do to kind of create a more interesting environment for our children to keep them engaged. I very rarely feel like a student is really, truly bored. Because if I see those little signs of maybe not engaging with the music, I want to try to find ways that are going to be interesting for that particular student. There are a lot of ways that we can make our environment interesting and engaging. Maybe there's a particular piece that's just really tricky, and so we're kind of running into a wall of sorts, and it comes out as boredom. Or maybe there's a it's an old review song and we're just having a hard time really staying engaged with it. So let's talk about this first one of hitting a little bit of a wall or a challenge and not being able to fully engage with the music because it's a little too hard. Most of the problems that I see in practice and with resistance and difficulty of really kind of getting into it stem from something maybe being a little bit too tricky. Sometimes the child is really resistant to break it down. It feels a little too much like work to kind of make it into small pieces, and it's more of what's kind of on our agenda as adults than what may be on the child's agenda when it comes to practice. Or they are just not quite, this just isn't a piece that they're really as interested in, but we still need to get through it to learn some technical points where it's going to make us a better musician for things down the road. When a child is really not, it's really just a little bit too hard, I want to find ways to make it easier. And that could be making it slower, doing a smaller section, isolating whatever is kind of making that part very difficult, or making it kind of, depending on the child, making it kind of silly or fun can sometimes really make the difference and get that repetition in that you need. So you are going to know your child best and be able to decide kind of what is the best approach. My first go-to usually is to try to do a smaller section with something when it's a little bit too hard. And I might see something that looks a little bit like boredom if it's a little bit too hard. And it's actually just, not quite being able to do it the way that they want to. But I think the key here is to not interpret that as boredom. As soon as we kind of start to say that, it starts to kind of infect other areas of our playing and our practice. And so if for some reason your child is not quite getting a piece well and they just don't seem very engaged in it, It could be that it's too hard and there's something that needs to be easier in order to move forward. Let's talk about the second thing. Your child knows the piece really well, and it's a review piece. It's something that they've been doing for a long time. So maybe they are just looking bored as they are playing through something that they have done many times. One of our tasks as practice partners and teachers is to continue to make pieces engaging, even though they are old. This is something I really picked up as a Suzuki early childhood teacher. We have a repertoire that we do for possibly 3, almost 4 years, and it's the same songs for that entire time. There are 2 sets of songs. So as the child learns and as they are growing, they do more and more and add more layers and more advancement to these pieces. And I think that's something that we sometimes neglect a little bit in our instrumental lessons, so that we are really focused on the next piece because there's always somewhere to go. With the early childhood stuff, there's no new pieces to learn. There's no place to kind of necessarily graduate to move on to the next thing. It's just bettering ourselves through these same pieces. It's really nice to think of those review pieces that you've done over and over as more like revisions, that you're constantly revising and bringing them up to the level that you are at. And that means that when a Book 4 student plays Book 1 pieces, they sound like a Book 4 student playing Book 1 pieces. It no longer sounds like a Book 1 student playing Book 1 pieces. It's different. You will know better how to change positions for your fingers or play sharps and naturals or bowing technical things. You just know all of that so much better after many more years of playing. One of the ways that we can really make this more engaged is to find ways to play with that. Don't be afraid to try new things with your review pieces. Experiment. Try playing something with all up bows. Try playing something with all staccato bows, even though it's a legato piece. Try playing something with a sound that sounds like velvet. What does that mean to you? Try telling a story with a piece. Don't be afraid to bring creativity into your review. I hope this gives you a few ideas on how you can tackle what might look like boredom. It's bound to creep in every once in a while. And I think it's a great skill that we are giving our children to learn how to continue to engage with something that may be old, may be repeated over and over, to continue to engage and better ourselves, make things even more beautiful, even bring in new ideas, new artistry through these things. What a fantastic gift. And if you can think about that in music, you can think about it in other areas as well. So find ways to turn that boredom and say, my child isn't really bored. They need something else in their practice. They are showing me that they are needing something, and maybe it's to make it easier, and maybe it's to be more creative. Thank you so much for joining me today. Happy practicing.